Bryd flies over Antarctica, an NBC report. Part publicity stunt, part scientific milestone, Richard Byrd's trip to Antarctica has profoundly affected America. Largely considered the greatest living explorer of all his time, American Richard Byrd is a U.S. naval officer, pioneer aviator, and the first person to fly over the South Pole. He discovered his love of exploring Arctic landscapes when during World War I he flew over Greenland as a member of the Navy. After the war, he built up his name and experience by flying over the North Pole and completing a daring transatlantic flight. After those two monumental expeditions, Byrd looked next to the South Pole, located at the bottom of the Earth in Antarctica. His desire to explore such a dangerous region stemmed from both his calling to blaze new trails and to fulfill his dreams of being famous for grand accomplishments, a drive that has made him known to some as an egotistical showman. Because he was already a famous American hero, after being the first to fly over the North Pole, Byrd had no trouble finding funding for his Antarctic mission. Wealthy donors and investors gave him plenty of money for his mission, trusting that he would make this one as successful as his others. For example, John D. Rockefeller Jr., Edsel Ford, helped contribute to the journey that's total cost was a whopping sum of about $400,000.
Byrd's trip is by far the best equipped expedition to the pole. The expedition was approximately composed of 2 ships, 3 planes, 100 dogs, including Byrd's personal terrier named Igloo, a snowmobile, 100 men, and 800 tons of supplies. Additionally, 19-year-old Boy Scout Paul Sipple was chosen after intense evaluation to come on the expedition. Byrd chose his men very carefully, believing that above any other resource, loyalty was the most valuable factor on an expedition. During his exploration of the magnificent southern continent, Byrd very effectively applied modern technology such as cameras, radios, and airplanes. In fact, Byrd's South Pole expedition is the first ever to use the Bumstead Sun Compass, a compass designed by Albert Bumstead of the National Geographic Society, specifically for his trip. This sun compass is an essential navigation tool because compasses utilizing the Earth's magnetic pull do not work at either of the poles.
After arriving at Antarctica by ship, Byrd's posse created a base camp named Little America near the Bay of Whales on the Ross Ice Shelf. Because snow has such good insulating properties, the buildings of Little America were made under the surface. After spending some time exploring the continent, Byrd and 3 others, pilot Bernt Balkan, co-pilot and radio man Harold June, and photographer Ashley McKinley, left Little America on November 28, 1929 at 3:29 p.m. in the 4 tri-motor plane donated by Edsel Ford and named after Floyd Bennett, a friend of Byrd's who accompanied him to the North Pole and passed away before Byrd left it for the South Pole. The airplane was so noisy that those in it were forced to communicate with notes only. Byrd used his Bumstead Sun Compass and fantastic navigational skills to find his way to the pole. The most challenging part of the trip came when they had to fly over the polar plateau and clear the 11,000 feet pass between 2 extremely tall mountains. Despite careful planning, they had difficulties gaining altitude and were forced to throw out empty gas tanks and emergency supplies. In the end, they narrowly cleared the mountains by just a few hundred yards. At about 1 a.m., the explorers reached the South Pole and flew a few miles beyond, to the right and to the left, to ensure they flew over the actual exact South Pole in case of any navigational errors. When directly over the pole, Byrd dropped a small stone wrapped in an American flag to the ground.
The expeditions continued after the flyover, with more people joining to research more about the fascinating Arctic land. Upon returning, Byrd has become even more of the famous American hero the nation needs outside of the war. Byrd was promoted to Rear Admiral and, at 41, is the youngest ever to receive this honor in America. He is commonly known throughout the nation as the Admiral of the Antarctic. He also received an Expeditionary Medal when he was invited to the White House by Hoover with his team. Byrd's expedition is highly significant because it made Byrd the first person to fly over the South Pole, although others had previously traveled there by other means. His team explored and documented many scientific discoveries they found on the icy land. When asked why anybody should care about the South Pole, Bryd responds that, quote, "It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science." He calls Antarctica an untouched reservoir of natural resources that God had set aside as man's future, claiming that there is enough coal to supply the whole world for quite a while, along with plenty of other minerals, oil, and uranium. Additionally, Bryd believes the Antarctic will become increasingly more important militarily. One of Bryd's visions for the South Pole is to transform it into a sort of freezer. He theorizes that in good years we can freeze and store food, specifically bread, there, and when lean years hit, we can retrieve the still fresh food. This idea demonstrates Bryd's creative, innovative powers. Apart from Antarctica's practical benefits, Bryd loves the South Pole for just what it is naturally, calling it the most peaceful place in the world. We couldn't agree more.